So, thanks for joining us again. We're in episode 2. Last time we talked about just the basics, some of the key terms to our investors. And today we're going to take a deeper dive into finding rentals and some of the strategies you use. I don't think we'll get into the BRRRR method quite yet, talking about getting the second and third. Let's get people set up with their first, how to find it and things like that. So let's start off with, how do you find a rental that works for your budget?
So that's a great place to start. I think number one is, before you even start, you have to have your strategy in mind. You have to already have an idea of what you're looking for, what is your buy box, because there are so many different strategies that you can do: small multifamily or small single family. You can do short term or long term, medium term. So once you determine what strategy you want to employ, the next level is to start research and find areas. Mm-hmm. And in your research, you need to look at some things. For example, if you're doing rentals, I like the buy and hold strategy. Yeah. I need to make sure that there is an area for the rentals. So that means employers. What is the employability? Okay. What is the affordability index? Do we have more than one employer? I like to have areas that have at least 2 large employers, so that I know if something happens and a manufacturing company shuts down and they leave town, that there's always a backup until I can reallocate or come up with a new strategy.
Schools too, right?
Schools absolutely would be in that. As far as strategy goes, you need to talk to people. You can look online, of course. I do a lot with agents. Since I invest out of state as well as in state, I deal a lot with investor agents. Mm-hmm. And then property management companies are crucial to your strategy. They're able to determine the rent in that area.
Okay.
Street to street, it varies. So you may have a single family house on one street and one block over. It's $50, $100, $150 difference in rents. So you look at that as well as transportation. All these things go in, and then you just work out a formula for what area you think meets your strategy best.
Do you ever have any pull information about active listings for sale? Because mortgages and things of that, right, would also play an influence. Like if the houses are very affordable in an area, then rentals may not be as prevalent.
Absolutely, yes. Again, that goes back to the affordability index, and you're looking at what people can afford and what homes are the average homes are selling for in that market, in that area. And it's I've been lucky with some, I've been good with some, and I've missed on some. So it just once you find your niche and then you start to learn your market, then it becomes a lot easier.
The biggest thing is, when we bought, and I bought a few, is curtailing the excitement, which sounds really counterintuitive, but you get too ahead of yourself sometimes and get really excited about the process, and can sometimes stretch outside of your buy box, right? Yeah. Trying to get into something, or maybe a little bit too much, and just jumping on it, and sometimes even working backwards, where I have a renter that would be perfect, and then trying to find a spot for them doesn't always work though either, I wouldn't think.
No, I think you're absolutely right. Once you have determined your criteria, it's easy to want to stray from that. But there's a lot that goes into it. For rentals, for example, with the Fair Housing Act, of course, when you're taking applications, you need to make sure whatever that criteria is, you'll get there. The same thing with buying your homes. Sometimes it's hard to be patient.
Yes.
It's hard to have your data in line. Once you have your spreadsheets or your data and you have determined what you're going to use to buy, you just got to be patient and wait out. It will come. The hardest one is usually the first one.
Yes.
And then once you start building your network and that people know exactly what you're looking for, you tend to have more and more opportunities.
Do you ever go back and reevaluate your criteria? If you find nothing, do you step back and maybe my box isn't the right? Do you ever do that and kind of take another look at things, or?
Absolutely. I think for me, in this past year, I have expanded, like I said, and done some things out of state. So I've identified 3 or 4 areas that I'm exploring in more detail. And that's just simply because here in Calvert County right now, for my strategy, things 1 or 2 at the most even fit that realm. But of course, it's just a hard process.
Yeah. The numbers are way down. There's not as many houses for sale and so forth. I'm sure that's really messing with the box and everything you're trying to get into. Another thing, the screening process. So you talked about it a little bit briefly. So what kind of things do you do for the screening process? Do you have any certain criteria, things to be wary of?
Yeah, so I really rely on my property managers. If that is a strategy, you can self-manage. Yeah. And obviously there's a lot that goes into that. I want to be more on the passive side, given my W-2 job, and I'm also working on other things outside. So I do rely on the property manager. I give them my basic criteria, and I ask them, in your market, in your area, you're the expert. And they often lead me down the right path and say, Marshall, this is good, you're right on point here, here's where we might need to adjust it, and they can help guide me too. But then it's my money, it's my investment. So I do have the ultimate say in the end.
Do you have a lot of questions for that agent when you sit down and pick the one you want? Like, do you have a screening process? Do you have, like, what kind of things do you ask them?
So the property manager, they have a rental agreement with you and a property management agreement.
Yeah.
And then it's things such as employment, how much their employment is for the rent. We like to see a certain number.
Okay.
Also with the credit scores, a lot depends, or if they've had previous evictions or current judgments on their credit report. The other things too are security deposits and pets. All these things just sort of go into play, and that's all outlined in the property management agreement prior to even marketing.
So you have a pretty safe. Yeah. So we talked about briefly. You said fair housing.
Yeah.
We have to be very, very, very careful. It has to be based on just the data and stats, right? You said credit score is a good one. Mm-hmm. Debt to income is another good one.
Absolutely.
Usually the credit score reflects if there's any outstanding debts and so forth. Sometimes people can even bring like landlord letters, I guess, and recommendations. You're weary of that because the problem being that sometimes the landlord is trying to get rid of that renter. So we got to be kind of not skeptical, but be leery of like some stuff like that. Yeah. You can call employers.
Absolutely.
If it's military, you can call commanding officers and talk to them about stuff as well. And you usually get a straight shot answer out of that too. But.
Absolutely. Those are great points. And the property manager that I use currently, they do the verification process and they'll document that. And we use a software program, Buildium, and that shows me everything that they're doing, where they are in the process. When they verify it, I'm able to see that entire report.
Buildium?
Buildium. Yeah.
Okay.
So there are many different.
There's lots, but that's one you're currently using.
Buildium is one.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So yeah, moral of the story: make sure you're thorough. Be sure you keep it straight to the numbers. Don't make any personal decisions or whatnot. You also can, I guess, make decisions based on size of family. If they have too many people for the size of house, you can also make that determination. If it's like a family of 15 and you have a townhouse, things like that, you can also.
Absolutely. And
you need to be careful of everything else in between.
I think being upfront too, we do charge an application fee and we give them the criteria up front because like you said, for fair housing, we want to make sure everyone knows exactly what the requirements are, and we ask them, make sure that you can satisfy all of these before you give us the fund, the non-refundable deposit, and we actually pull the credit and start there.
Cool. That's good. So everybody's going to know what they're getting themselves into. So, all right, now that they're in the house, repairs. Do you set aside a certain amount of money for repairs and budget for that and get all that stuff ready?
Absolutely. So when I'm looking in my buy box area and with my short-term or long-term rentals, buy and hold strategy typically is more long-term. I'm going in for 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. I have in my spreadsheet, I allocate a certain amount of money each month towards that. A lot depends on the age of the house. If it's been renovated recently, you can probably lower that. So we have a range. We do general maintenance, that we do a month-to-month things that we talk about. We have vacancy that I take out. We also do what are called capital expenditures or CapEx. Those are the long-term high expense items if I have to replace a roof, for example, down the road. All of that goes in to the actual buy formula up front, the property management fee, and then from there I look at what an average deal is in a market, and I only buy things that are above that great, what I consider great deals.
All right, a lot of unpack. You said a lot of fun things right there, so let's do this. One thing, when you buy your houses, do you do inspections?
Yes.
Okay.
You can, if you gain an experience, for example, I have my home inspector license.
Yeah, you did for a little while.
I did have that, so I feel a little more comfortable looking at certain things. But if you're a new investor, absolutely, I think that is one caveat that you have to have is an inspection. Someone, a third party that can go in there and look at the property and really delve into its maintenance issues, if it has any, some things you may need to consider down the road or before you purchase the property.
Do you do monthly or quarterly inspections, or do you have your property manager go in and check on certain things? Like I know there's ways like you can go in there and switch out, like for example, vent, help me out, not screens. The things behind the vents, the filters.
The filters, but...
You had me. So like go in there and swap out filters and do that as a way of kind of like just checking to make sure the general flow of the house and everything's going well? Do things
Absolutely.
like that?
The property management team has a certain time frame when they go in for inspections or repairs. And you can adjust that because obviously their time is very valuable.
Yes.
And so there's a fee that's involved. Once you have a tenant that's been in there long term and you get a relationship and a rapport and you know how they operate, you probably don't need to inspect as often. But in the beginning, you can do quarterly. You can choose to do monthly if you want. And then, of course, every time there's a repair done, there's photos taken before and after.
That's good. That is awesome advice. And you have to, give that tenant a specific amount of time, 24 hours notice, 48 hours notice, whatever you decide up front, but you can't just stop by whenever you feel like it because you get yourself in a lot of trouble.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Do you ever, and I've seen this before once in a while, do you ever do renter deductibles? So if the renter damages something in the house, do you ever do like a renter deductible?
You can, certainly. That's in the agreement too, because some things are just general wear and tear.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what you're taking out, but there are some times that accidents happen.
Flushing the toilet, the He-Man characters down the toilet, for example, like that's happened a few times in the past.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can do those, much like an insurance policy, you do have a deductible up front. It also helps alleviate some calls, some tendencies to call it when they don't necessarily need to.
Yeah, you're right. That's another good one too. We don't need that 4 a.m. call that my kid just flushed the dog brush down the toilet. We don't need that stuff.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're going to get out of... All right, so those are all good. You're getting in a lot of preparation, a lot of preparing yourself, and you're hedging a lot of bets to make sure you're getting safe. You talked about the vacancy. So what kind of funds do you set aside, and how do you collect the funds for the vacancy? Do you, collect extra rent? Do you, have a vacancy rate up front? And what kind of time frame? Like a 3-month vacancy? Like what kind of things do you plan for?
So for me, I rely on the experience of the property management team and to find out what is the typical vacancy rate for them. And then we can go into how do they market or fill vacancies and things of that nature. Based on that data, I typically pull out 5% every month of whatever that monthly rent payment is. And that just gets into an account. I have a threshold. Once I reach a certain number, then I can reallocate funds from there. But every single month, those percentages that we talked about, 5% for vacancy, I'm somewhere between 5 and 9% for repairs and maintenance. CapEx is around 9% until I get to a certain level, because when you first purchase a property, those cash reserves are zero. If something happens in the first 6 to 9 to 12 months, then that has to come out of my pocket, of course. But once
you do have home insurance, renter's insurance too, right?
You do, yes. We require renter's insurance, and then of course I have umbrella policies.
Cover your butt a little bit in case something big happens.
Right.
Excellent. So the property managers have a list of handymen, contractors, things of that nature. Do you have them just handle it all themselves, or do they call you and say, hey, this is broken, just want to let you know, or how do you usually do that?
So it's a great question. In the property management contracts that I've seen, typically there's a dollar amount. So anything up to X amount, they document it and they go ahead and take care of that. If it's something, obviously more higher than that or an emergency, they contact me right away. Otherwise, I get a monthly report. And in that monthly report, I can see this is the rent that was collected. These were the minor issues that were repaired. And if they reach that threshold in a month, then of course they reach out to me.
Okay, so that way in case. All right, excellent. And the last topic is your least favorite, is not paying rent. Let's not be flowery and say that everybody's going to come in and pay their rent and everything's going to go smoothly. There's going to be people that don't pay rent. I do believe you said that you just have your property managers handle a lot of that stuff. Is that correct?
It is for me. If you're self-managing, things may be a little different. I would certainly recommend that they contact legal advice and attorney and things so they know the proper procedures and the laws. For us, there is a policy that's in place. A lot of it has to do with the upfront. You can mitigate a lot of vacancy. Vacancy is the biggest expense probably as a renter and an investor. So if you can mitigate a lot of that by having the right buy box, the right criteria, you vet all of your possible renters, and you get the right one in there, you greatly reduce your risk. However, there are times when it happens. And so there is fair housing, there's procedure, and as far as timing, when they get a letter, they get the notification, and then what happens afterwards. That's part of the property manager's job. I'm involved throughout making obviously the decisions with them, and they let me know, but I rely on them.
If you're managing that property yourself, here's my humble advice. Keep records of everything. So say they send you an email of some sorts or a text message of sorts, or if you have a phone conversation, follow up with an email and keep just records of the things that take place. You may not seem that big of a deal right now, but it's nice to have it and to reference it later. So have a place, maybe even start like a Google folder or a thumb drive or something where you're keeping all that stuff. So in case you unfortunately need it, I do have a client right now going through that right now, and she's been printing out all the text messages, and it's a pain. So it does happen once in a while. Try to keep track of stuff as it flows. I know sometimes that can be a pain in the butt, but if you're sitting down and doing your reports every month or whatever, also go back through and make sure all of those records and all the texts and stuff are in there as well, because you'll thank me.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
it does not always go well. And like you said, what happens is you get the letter out, and then after the letter, I'm not going to go through the whole process because every county has its own A, B, C, D, like this is what you do, but you'll end up in the court, you'll end up pleading your case, and if you have a property management, they can go on your behalf as long as you have an agreement set in place. But it gets uglier before it gets prettier usually. So, and there's all kinds of stuff going on with collecting partial payments and full payments, and just be sure you know the rules. They have like pamphlets. Actually, if you go to the courthouse, the district pamphlets will give you how to do this and how to handle it. Go out and just look them over. Just know what you're getting yourself into, because to know the rules and laws is essential.
Absolutely.
So we're good with. We're all set for the how to buy a rental, how to find a rental, and hedge your bets. So that way you're going to become profitable. Anything to add?
I just think there are so many, like we talked about earlier, and we'll probably talk more and more as we
do
more and more videos, is the reasoning behind it. Up front, we talked about the strategies. The reason that I like buy and hold, there are a couple reasons. The big ones for me really are you can do cash flow each month.
Yeah.
You could do tax advantages. Yeah. I can.
We need to get into the tax advantages.
Right. We could talk about that. Right now with inflation, you can hedge against inflation if you can get. I recommend 30-year fixed rate debt right now. That's less than the going inflation rate. So there's a plethora of reasons why I like the buy and hold strategy.
There you go.
So we could talk about those maybe at some time.
Do you have? This is a personal question. Do you have your favorite kind of? Do you like multifamily better than single family, or do you like townhouses better than condos? What's your favorite?
I prefer multifamily, and just because with single family I have great success. Multifamily I do prefer side-by-side units.
Okay.
I have a strategy that's in there too: garages, things for storage. I like obviously washer and dryer hookups and things of that I prefer, because if something happens to one tenant, you don't go from whatever your rental payment was down to zero.
Yeah.
It's typically happened, whether it's a duplex, triplex, or a quad. But there are certainly single-family homes, and there are markets out there that do very well as well.
Yeah.
Also.
Have you ever owned a house with a pool? I mean, rental with a pool?
No.
Never. You skip
Never.
that one. Never. You mess around that.
No.
You fill it full of Jell-O, and then you're covered. You don't have to do anything like that. There's a lot of wholesale liability.
There's a lot of things I would put in there besides water. That's for sure.
So if you're getting your investing and you're starting strategies up, a lot of this information hopefully is going to help you get yourself prepared. Be patient with the numbers. There's a lot of, I'm sure, mathematic formulas and things online to help you out as well. Like we didn't get into basics or specifics because we don't know what your situation is. So we didn't really break down too many people's. But know your market, know your area, know your budget, know that it's slow growth and to be patient. Yeah. And then from there, you'll eventually slowly, start building it up and making money. So next month, we're talking about the Burr method, which is taking that one that you found and you've patiently been waiting, you're good to go, turning that into 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and that's how you really grow that portfolio out and grow wealth. So
absolutely,
we appreciate your help, and we'll see you again next month, hopefully.
Great, thank you.
All right.